Have you ever met someone who seemed amazing at first, charming, confident, interesting, and then slowly something started feeling wrong? Maybe they controlled conversations, maybe they manipulated emotions, maybe being around them became exhausting. But by the time you noticed it clearly, you were already emotionally involved. Hello, and welcome back to Bookworm. Today we're diving into Dangerous Personalities, a book written by former FBI profiler Joe Navarro. And according to him, dangerous people rarely look dangerous in the beginning. That's exactly why they're dangerous. This book explains the hidden behavioral patterns behind manipulative, toxic, and destructive personalities. Not movie villains, real people. The kinds of people you can work with, date, trust, or even love. And once you understand these patterns, you start recognizing warning signs most people miss completely. Stay with me as we dive deeper, because this might completely change how you judge people. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Right, let's dive straight into this explainer. Today we're going to explore exactly how to identify harmful people in our lives way before they cause any serious damage. We'll be digging into the truly fascinating and frankly life-saving insights of Joe Navarro. He's a former FBI special agent and criminal profiler, so he knows a thing or two about this. Over a career spanning literally decades, where he interviewed everyone from your typical white-collar criminals to actual terrorists and serial killers, Navarro realized something incredibly profound. He noticed that the people who end up hurting us the most, well, they almost always share distinct, predictable behavioral patterns. And the truly incredible part about all this, if you just know what to look for, you can spot them early, way before the damage is actually done. So I want you to take a second right now and actually picture a dangerous person in your head. Like, really visualize it. What comes to mind? For a lot of us, we usually picture some sort of monster lurking in a dark alley, right? Or maybe a stranger wearing a ski mask, some kind of obvious, undeniable villain. But the reality? The reality is actually far more subtle and honestly, in a lot of ways, much more unsettling. The dangerous person is very rarely that stranger in an alley. More often than not, it's that incredibly charming coworker sitting right next to you in the cubicle. Or maybe it's the charismatic new partner you just started dating. Or even a volatile neighbor. They don't look like monsters at all. They look exactly like us. There's this powerful concept Navarro uses in his work that hits the nail on the head. He says, hindsight is 20/20, foresight is mostly blind. Think about it. Whenever a tragedy hits the news, or when someone we know is financially ruined or completely emotionally destroyed by a partner, people almost always look back and say, wow, the signs were all there. But in the actual moment, we are mostly blind to them. And why is that? It's simply because no one has ever sat us down and taught us what those predictable behavioral warning signs actually look like in real time. Well, that is exactly what we're going to fix today. We're going to train our foresight. Okay, here's our psychological map for this explainer. First, hiding in plain sight. Second, the narcissist and the unstable. Third, the paranoid and the predator. Fourth, rationalizing toxic behavior. And finally, defending with boundaries. Let's start with Section 1, hiding in plain sight, myth versus reality. Now, the Hollywood myth basically conditions us to believe that danger is purely physical. It's obvious and it always comes from strangers. But the everyday reality we actually live in is entirely different. Emotional, psychological, and financial destruction can absolutely be just as devastating as physical violence. In fact, sometimes it's even more so because it's so insidious. It happens quietly, right behind closed doors. It's the boss who just systematically grinds down your self-worth day after day. Or it's the partner who secretly drains your bank account. These are dangerous personalities, and they are inflicting deep, lasting harm while hiding completely in plain sight. And this is exactly what Navarro realized during his time as a profiler. Relying on complex clinical jargon or broad statistics, like saying a certain percentage of the population has X or Y disorder, that doesn't actually do you any good when you are standing face to face with a toxic person. Instead, focusing on behaviors is the absolute key here. For instance, if someone consistently takes pleasure in humiliating you, it really doesn't matter what their official clinical diagnosis is. What matters is your safety and being able to recognize that behavior as a glaring, blazing red warning sign. Moving on to Section 2, the narcissist and the unstable. So let's look at the narcissist first. We tend to throw this word around a lot in pop culture, usually to describe someone who takes too many selfies. But a truly dangerous narcissist is something else entirely. True confidence is an admirable trait. It's a strength of character that actually lifts other people up. But narcissistic arrogance? That's a grandiose sense of entitlement that exists entirely at the expense of everyone else. They fundamentally lack empathy. Full stop. They treat other human beings like functional objects, just tools to get what they want. Navarro shares this chillingly simple story to illustrate this. He describes a narcissistic traveler at an airport who brushed past an elderly woman, violently knocked her over, and just kept walking without so much as a single backward glance. Because to a dangerous narcissist, other people aren't fully real. They're just obstacles in the way.
Next up is the emotionally unstable personality. This one is defined by a pervasive emotional instability, incredibly unpredictable reactions, and severe, repeated boundary violations. Being around this type of person is like being trapped on an exhausting roller coaster of incredible highs and absolutely devastating lows. As one criminologist perfectly put it, they are essentially victims in search of an oppressor, and their extreme behavior often causes extreme reactions. Navarro details some real-life, everyday extremes to show just how toxic this gets. He mentions a mother who attacked her own child with a spatula almost daily over completely minor frustrations, or a spouse who, after just a standard run-of-the-mill argument, took a box cutter and systematically slashed every single one of her husband's expensive business suits. This is not just someone being moody, right? It is catastrophic, wildly disproportionate retaliation.
And when we look at these behaviors, things like constantly fishing for compliments, threatening self-harm when they don't get their way, or just flying into a rage over incredibly minor slights, we have to realize these aren't just quirky personality traits. They are loud, undeniable warning signs. For example, when a partner threatens suicide simply because you told them you want to spend one evening hanging out with your friends, that is not love, let's be clear. That is unstable manipulation and a profound, terrifying lack of boundaries. Section 3. The paranoid and the predator. The paranoid personality goes way, way beyond just being a cautious person. These individuals are consumed by irrational mistrust and a very rigid ideology. They're the types to hold on to grudges forever. They obsessively monitor their partner's emails and phone records, and they systematically, piece by piece, socially isolate their victims so that eventually there is no one left to offer a reality check. Their internal warning system is just completely stuck in overdrive. And the scary part is, when this hyper-suspicion meets a real-world stressor, it can erupt into extreme violence. Navarro points to the tragic case of Jimmy Lee Dykes. He was a paranoid individual whose totally irrational grievances escalated until he killed a bus driver and barricaded himself in a bunker with an abducted child. And finally, we reach the predator. Their mindset is brutally simple. What's mine, and what's yours is mine. The predator is the most deeply destructive personality type on this list. They literally have no stop signs, no conscience, no empathy, zero remorse. Navarro describes what it's like sitting across from one of these individuals and staring into their eyes. He says you feel this subconscious chill, a reptilian stare that is utterly calm and completely devoid of humanity. Predators view other people purely as opportunities to exploit or obstacles to remove. That's it. So whether it's a serial con artist stealing a grandparent's entire life savings or a violent offender, they simply take whatever they want without a second thought.
Let's move to Section 4, rationalizing toxic behavior. So the big question is, why do we ignore these blaring red flags? The answer is camouflage. Dangerous personalities do not introduce themselves as villains. Instead, they use what we call a charm paradox. They actively weaponize traits like superficial charm, false confidence, and really rapid relationship building to completely hide their dangerous intentions. They'll play the victim to trigger your natural empathy. They'll create a totally false sense of urgency so you commit to them before you even have time to think straight. And they will test your boundaries very early on. It might be a slightly inappropriate joke or a small favor that pushes the line just a bit, just to see if you'll tolerate it. And they do all of this to systematically make their victims doubt their own gut instincts. And guys, it gets so much worse when these traits overlap. As Navarro puts it, 1 is bad, 2 is terrible, 3 is lethal. Human personalities are complex, obviously, and these dangerous traits can and do combine. When a predator also happens to possess narcissistic and paranoid traits, the toxicity multiplies exponentially. Just think of infamous cult leaders like Jim Jones or Charles Manson. You had their grandiose narcissism combined perfectly with their predatory lack of conscience and their paranoid isolation of their followers. It created a perfectly lethal psychological trap. So, the really crucial takeaway here is summarized perfectly by this quote: "We see only what we are prepared to see." Look, we all want to believe the best in people. It's human nature. We want to believe that if we just love them enough, or if we just listen to them enough, they're going to change. But we have to actively prepare ourselves to observe reality without that bias. We have to accept the hard, uncomfortable truth that most dangerous people will wear a mask, and it is entirely up to us to recognize it when that mask starts slipping. And that brings us to Section 5, Defending with Boundaries. I need to be absolutely clear about this. You cannot fix a dangerous personality. We have to address that common, very human urge to try and heal these people. Navarro firmly notes that these individuals are incredibly resistant to change because at their core, they fundamentally lack introspection. They don't see themselves as the problem. When you try to help them, you don't cure them. You literally just extend your own victimization. The tragic reality we see over and over is that well-meaning, kind people give these personalities chance after chance, and it almost always ends with devastating results. Remember, your job is not to be their therapist. Your job is to keep yourself safe. So here are the actual, actionable steps for defense. Number 1, act. If you ever feel threatened, do not sit around waiting for an apology or a logical explanation. Just get away. Number 2, think. You need to prioritize your safety over confronting them. Confronting a dangerous personality often triggers catastrophic rage, so it is usually much safer to simply extricate yourself quietly. And number 3, claim distance. You have to take back control of your time, cut the emotional strings they use to manipulate you like a puppet, and establish an absolute red line. With these types of personalities, the word no cannot be a negotiation. No has to be an absolute impenetrable boundary. I want to wrap up this explainer by empowering you with this final provocative thought. Who in your life is draining your cup? And what boundaries are you going to build today? Benjamin Franklin once said, "An investment in knowledge pays the best interest." By learning to recognize these predictable behavioral patterns early on, you aren't just saving yourself from a bunch of unnecessary drama, you are actively protecting your emotional health, your financial stability, and honestly, recognizing these signs might just save your life. Keep your eyes open, always trust your instincts, and fiercely defend your boundaries.
If there's one idea to take from this book, it's this. Danger rarely announces itself clearly. Dangerous personalities shows that toxic and manipulative behavior often appears gradually. A small lie, a controlling comment, a lack of empathy, small signs, easy to ignore at first, especially when someone is charming or emotionally persuasive. That's what makes awareness so important, because once emotional attachment forms, people start explaining away behaviors they would normally recognize as unhealthy. But patterns matter, behavior matters. And the earlier you notice those patterns, the more you can protect yourself, not with paranoia, with awareness. If this made you think differently about human behavior, like the video, subscribe to Bookworm and stay observant, because sometimes the most dangerous people look completely normal.